Yes.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started for today's class. All right. So on Wednesday or Thursday, we looked at the client side of the storage part. Today, we are going to look at the server side. Okay. So before we begin, you guys might realize that we are kind of now slowly trending from today towards the back end. We did a lot of front end. Today and onwards, we are kind of trending towards the back end now. So the things we are going to learn today, that's kind of considered back end. We'll be looking at some databases. Okay, then after this week, there's 2 weeks of project, and when we come back, we are going to start again, but we'll be starting from back end concepts. Okay. The good part about this backend, the backend in this course is that you don't have to learn a new language. The bad part is it's still JavaScript. So yeah, okay. So again, if you guys are still kind of behind JavaScript concepts and everything, this is the time. Please go back and make sure. I'm not saying you should be like a pro, but you should be a pro by now. Okay. Well, at least from the concept that we have learned, right? jQuery, JavaScript. I still feel like I wouldn't say everybody. Okay. Yeah, there are a few students who kind of have a good grasp on it, and that happens. But I would still keep saying this until each one of you is like a pro on it. Okay. I still feel like most of the people are still kind of behind. I mean, I do exercises and some of the concepts. After week 7, some of my expectations are that when I write some of the code, I still do live coding and I will keep doing it. But my expectation is, at least I want that, I don't have to keep going back and explaining the same thing over it. I still feel like, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, if, we did this exercise before, we have used this concept. What happens is, the exercise that I'm doing, the focus kind of shifts now, goes back to something that we have already covered, right? Again, it's okay. You can ask later. You can ask questions. I'm still not discouraging you, but that gives me some feeling that still people are not going back and not doing the activities. Or I mean, I'm sure everybody is doing the homework. I get that, but again, as I said, that the focus should be on the activities, and your homework will get done automatically, right? And my concern over here, or what I feel like my job is to push you guys to the maximum. Again, if you think this is difficult, you should sit in one of those 3 or 4 hours interview. You will, hopefully nobody comes out crying out of it, but I've heard worse stories. They will grill you, and imagine 4 hours just like sitting over there. They'll give you like a 5-10 minute break, and the next interview comes in, and everybody, the interviewer is fresh, and they have this set of instructions or questions. They're like, yeah, I want to try this on this, but you are like 3 hours in it, and you are like, oh my god, I think I'm like done, right? So when you walk into the interview, I want you guys to be prepared, and you should at least know your stuff, right? Yeah, they will ask you some questions that are going to be difficult, but if you are focusing on the main concepts, you will never get to the question they're asking. Oh, well, how do I declare an array to start with, or how do I do this? And they're asking you totally something else. They expect that, yeah, you know the syntax and you can write it, and you're like, well, how do I do this? What is this doing? How do I save this? 20-30 minutes, it's already gone. That's the limit. If you're on a phone interview, I told you guys, right? The expectation is you have to answer 3 questions and 2 minutes each. I haven't even reached that. I get to like 2 questions, maybe 2.5, and that's okay. It depends on what their requirement is. But they will, if you keep answering this question, they will ask you up to 3 questions, and they think that you should be able to answer in like 20 minutes, like solve the whole thing, and it's working, right? Um, and then if that's not enough, then you go on site. I told you, right? 4 hours, 3 hours. Again, it varies from companies. But I see the trend is catching up. Even smaller companies, they're kind of getting into that trend, and they're like, yeah, I mean, we're not going to pay you much, but we're going to grill you for 4 hours, and be like, yeah. So yeah, I'm like, well, thank you for wasting my time, but okay. I mean, it's good practice, still good practice. I go with that mindset that okay, if I don't even want to accept that position, it will give me good practice for something that my goal is. Okay, so again, please go back. JavaScript is not going away. It's not going to change in this course. It's not going to change outside. So we need to make sure we have good grasp before we come back from our projects and we start Node.js, right? It is still JavaScript, but it's backend, right? People get a lot of confused. They're like, well, why doesn't it run my browser? Well, I told you it's backend. It doesn't run in your browser anymore. We're kind of going away from that, okay? So please go back, make sure you guys have good grasp for all the JavaScript concept that we have learned until today. We'll be looking at some new things, but again, from the coding perspective, it's still JavaScript. I'll be showing you JavaScript and jQuery, but my focus would be on the database side. Okay? Any questions before we proceed? All right, let's see how we come out of this class at the end. Okay? Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right, so let's go ahead. So we talked about the client storage, right? Today we are going to talk about server. And what was client storage? We looked at local storage. All right, everybody good with that? Session storage, and then we looked at cookies, and that kind of comprises. There are a few more things, but these are the main things. If you know these things, you can make a good application that kind of uses your local storage. But we saw the limitation, right? Limitation is space. You have like what, 5 MB, around 5 MB available for your whole local storage and everything, right? You can't go more over it, and you can't save everything in a local storage, right? And that's where this server storage part comes in. Okay, so when we talk about server side, we are talking about databases, all right? Data source, where we are going to store large amount of data, right? Could be user data, could be if you are in a retail shop, it could be your products and all kind of data. Okay. Now when we talk about server storage, I said we are going to talk about databases. In this course, we are going to look at 3 databases. Okay. First one is Firebase. The second we look at is MySQL. And third is MongoDB. Okay, but for today our focus is Firebase. At some later point in the course we'll look at the other 2. Okay, now why Firebase? Firebase is relatively easier to set up than the rest of the 2. Okay, the setup is easy. You don't have to install anything extra. It's all kind of web based, and so it kind of helps us get started with setting up part relatively quickly. Okay. The second part is with the knowledge that we have, we can start using Firebase. All right. With these 2, we need to learn Node.js before we can start using these in our code. Okay. I mean, you can learn these separately, but if you want to implement this in our code, we need to learn Node.js before we can get to these. This one kind of incorporates nicely with our vanilla JavaScript. So that's why we are going to start with Firebase, and that will help in your project also. So if you see that by this time, by the end of week 7, we have our front end done, we have our APIs done, and we have our database done. And that's all the requirement for creating a website, right? That functions, that does everything. It has a front end, it has a middleware, the APIs, and then it has a back end, the database stuff. Okay, so that kind of flows nicely into our project, and then you guys will be working on a project using all these 3 concepts. Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. So for the next part, I would recommend you guys follow along. For now, I will just set up how to create a database in Firebase. That's all we are going to do first. And then I'll come to the coding part. At that point, I would say that concentrate how I'm coding. Everything is in the documentation. We can go back and look at it. But that with a point that I want everybody to focus on how we are using Firebase in our code. Okay, first we look at the setup. The setup is on a website, so you guys can follow along. It'll be much faster that everybody has their databases set up. And then we can move on to the coding part. Okay, so the first thing is, what is Firebase? Firebase is a database. It's from Google. You have some amount of space available for free. I might be wrong. It might be like 10 GB or something. That's still a lot of space. So Google gives us this database. This database is an extremely fast database. It's like you update something on your website, and the database gets updated like almost instantaneously. Okay, we'll see what are some of the use cases of such kind of databases. These two kind of take some time. I mean, you won't be able to notice much, but they proud themselves. They say that we are like almost instantaneous. You update something and it's updated over here. Okay, and we'll see this in practical terms, and we'll see how this is working. Okay, so the first thing we'll do, Google Firebase, so go to firebase.google.com, and this will bring up your Firebase database. Okay, so what I did was I have signed it with my Gmail. Again, I don't remember if that's a requirement, but if you have never signed up for Firebase, you'll get a sign up screen. You just have to sign in with your Gmail, I think, and that should bring you up over here. Let's go to see what get started is. All right, so we'll come to this screen, and what they will be saying is you have to create a project. All right, I had like few projects and I cleaned up the shop, so there's not so that you guys can start fresh and see what's going on. Okay, everybody good until here? Got to this screen? Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to add a project, and you can give this project any name. Okay, I'm going to call this click counter because that's the example I'm going to show you when we get to the coding part. I'm going to accept everything, sell my soul to Google and my computer data, and I'm going to create my project.
Your firstborn, your last.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, Google probably won't say it, but whole family right now. All right, so we'll come to this screen. All right, this is still not complete. We'll go ahead. So this just created like an app, right? We haven't done anything. We haven't really created a database. So on the left, you will see a panel, and you will see database over here. That's what we are going to be working on today. So the first thing we have to do is we have to create a database to this app. All right, I'm going to click database. And then it gives you some options, Cloud Firestore or real-time database. That's what we are looking for. Okay, I said it's an instantaneous update. So Firebase is called a real-time database. It means that as soon as you update something on your website, it gets updated on the backend. Okay, so we are going to choose real-time database, and then we're going to create database. Okay, this is important. You will come up with this screen with security rules. right now we don't want to get into authentication and security, so we are going to select the second option, start in test mode. Okay, it's simple and easy to start with for now. So what this does is that anybody who has access to your website can update, delete, or whatever to your data. Right, that's just fine. We don't have any important data right now. The first one kind of requires more authentication. Now, if you select the first one, when we go into our coding part, you will get an error saying permission denied or something. All right. So either do this over here. If you miss this step, then there's a setting. What you have to do is you have to type it out true to this JSON that you see on the screen. All right. We'll come to that step if somebody misses it. But if you start in test mode, you're not going to get that error, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay. Again, test mode is saying there's no authentication. You wouldn't basically create a production app with no authentication. But for now, we are good. Okay. Everybody good? So now we are at this step, we have created our database. Now we have database that we can use in our code. All right, this is the database that we are going to connect to from our web app, from our website, and then update this database with some data. Okay, everybody good? All right. So Google is really good about, their documentation is really good. It's kind of sometimes a little bit difficult to understand. But whatever methods that we are going to use, we are going to go through their documentation. The first thing is, if you go into your project on the top, the settings icon, you go into your project set. Let me see if I can, hold on. Oh, this is okay. So go into your project settings, and then you will see it says there are no apps in your project, right? And then it says select a platform to get started. So Firebase primarily is used for your mobile apps. If you're developing an iOS app or an Android app, they use Firebase a lot. And I said it's a real time, right? So most of the apps want like instantaneous response. So for example, like notifications, all right? You have an app, let's suppose you have a smart home app, right? And something changes, you want that notification to show up, right? And show up like right now, not like an hour later. Right? So Firebase is, I said, a real-time database. So that's why it's really popular with mobile development. They use this as like a notification sending mechanism also. Okay? But we won't worry about it. We are going to use it as a data store. We're going to store our data and get our data back. That's what we are doing. Okay? So we don't have to worry about iOS. We don't have to worry about Android. We have to worry about the third one. All right? The third one is, if you see, remember these angular brackets from HTML, hopefully, everyone? Yeah. Okay, so if you click this, they will give you code. And this is the starter code. You can use this exact code, and it is going to be, the JSON, the properties are going to be the same that you see on the screen. The values are going to be different. This is my database, so I'm going to see these values. You guys are going to see something different. Okay? So this assures that everybody is accessing their own database. Now, take a minute and see. This should be clear to us, right? We know JavaScript now. The first thing they're saying is add a script, right? Source. So basically, we are using Google's Firebase API, right? They create a Firebase.js file. We need to include that in our HTML, and then in our JavaScript code, we have to include this config. And this is what will help our JavaScript code to connect to this database. All right. If you see, there are some properties, API key, domain, database URL, project ID, storage bucket, messaging, sender ID. All of this helps Google to identify which database you are trying to connect, so that you don't connect to my database or somebody else's. You connect to the right one that you created. Okay. The next one, Firebase.initialize app config. What does that mean? What is it? Actual logic? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what is the word Firebase? What does this mean? It's probably a variable that's in our Firebase.js file, right? I mean, I can take a guess. It's a global variable that they have declared, right? Because I don't see any declaration. I don't have to worry about any declaration. Config is a local variable. That's why we are using the var key. So they don't have that. But Firebase looks like they have an object probably that has some functions, and initialize app is a function that they are calling, and they are passing in config, and they will initialize the app for you. Okay. All right. So now we'll go to the coding part. We have set up the database. We are going to push some data into this database now. Okay. This is where we go ahead and create our code. Okay. And this is what we are going to use. All right. Let's see how we are going to use this. Okay. Before I proceed, any questions on this? Everybody good? Everybody able to set up the database? Yes. No. Yeah. Eventually, you will have to copy. I'll show you what to do. Yeah. But at this point, you should have the database set up. Okay. Now you can look at the code, and you will have some exercises to practice. So I would say concentrate on how I'm going to access this database. Okay. All right. Let's go here. Okay. So I'm going to start with my same template. Okay. So I already have a folder. I have my index.html empty. It doesn't do anything right now. It has only my jQuery and my click.js added over here. Okay. I have my click.js, doesn't have anything, only document.ready. Okay. I added my style.css. I don't have anything over here, but I just start with the basic template every time I start coding. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to create is a simple web app. This app is going to have one button. All right. Okay. And I'm going to have a counter. What do I mean by a counter? Just a number that gets updated. Okay. Every time I click this button, my counter is going to go by 1. Okay. Simple app. Right? 1, 2, 3 keeps going up. What is going to happen is every time I update this counter, I'm going to go and save it to my database. Right? Simple app, but it's very powerful. It shows you how do you take a value and how do you update it to your database. That's what I'm going to do. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and create a simple button. Let's see. Okay, start with my button, and let's give it an ID, which I can use it on my jQuery click button, and I'm going to say click me. Really excited button. Okay. All right, simple button. Let's go, and this should be my end of my index file. Okay. Now, remember this piece of code? They want us, before we start using Firebase, they want this to be included. Okay. So since I'm going to be, you can, again, you guys understand, if I just copy this, I can put it in my HTML and it will work. They have the script tags, everything written out for you, right? But I like to do it, I like to keep my HTML and JavaScript separate, so I'm going to do a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. And do I need to add after or before? I think this is fine because jQuery is not dependent on this, but my click.js might be using this. So I'm going to put it before my click.js. Okay. Now, the easy way out is copy this and put it in your, just put it on the top, even before somewhere over here. Okay. This is good. It will work. All right. But you see, I want to keep my things a bit separate. Hold on. Let me complete this thought and then let me complete the flow and then we'll come back to questions. Okay. Now this will work. It's just copy pasting and I can start using my Firebase app, whatever the next instructions are. Okay. But I like to keep them separate. I want this to be in a different file. Why? Because that's how I would prefer that, so that my code kind of remains separate. So I can create a new JS file and I keep my code over here. Right? So next time if I create a new database, what do I have to do? I just have to copy this file, use it in a different folder or a different project and just change these things. So they kind of remain separate out from this. I'm not muddling everything in my my regular JavaScript file that my custom code is going to reside in. Okay, that's just the way I like to distribute my code. Again, you can totally take this entire thing and put it on your HTML, and it will still work. Okay. Okay. So now since I have this, I need to include my Firebase API in my HTML. Okay. I'm going to have to do it before. Why before? Because I'm going to use that code in my click.js. So I want to initialize all these Firebase, whatever the code is over here. Okay. All right. There's one more thing that you will have to add in your before you start using this. Okay. We have to initialize a database. We created this app. The app is initialized, but our database is still not initialized. So what you have to do is var create a variable. Let's call it database. Okay. And then do Firebase dot database. It's a function, and we can look at the documentation in a bit. But this is the minimum requirement to set up your database, Firebase database in your JavaScript code, and that's it. Right? At this point, I can close my Firebase API.js and forget about it, and I can concentrate on my coding part. Okay? It's relatively simple. I just copy this code, bring it over, and then just add this line, initialize my database. That's it. Okay? And everything else, I'm going to use this variable in click.js. Can I use this variable? What do you guys think? I can, right? Why? It's a global variable by now. I used a var keyword, I declared, and I added this Firebase API in my HTML. This is accessible to everything in that folder. So I can totally use this variable, and this is what I'm going to be using to interact with the database now. Okay? So at this point, our initial setup is done, and we can go back to our code and concentrate what we have to do. All right? Just remember the variable that you declared, I called it database. You can call it whatever you want, DB. That's the other thing I can think, DB, that's it. I don't know what else would be more appropriate. This thing?
No, the Firebase
API? Okay. Yeah, we'll come back to it again. We'll be using this. Now, once I create this API, right, I can keep reusing this in my other projects. That's what I like. All I have to do is change, update these variables. I can copy this. I don't have to worry about declaring this. So now a lot of people kind of forget this line. This is the most forgetting line ever, right? Because it's not included over there. They might as well just do it. I don't know why they don't do it. But so that's why people are like, well, it's not working. Well, you're missing. Did you initialize the database? No. Okay. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is that just shorthand so you don't have to type out Firebase.database?
Mm-hmm. No, that's what exactly it is. Yeah. So that I don't have to keep going Firebase.database. Something. Yeah. Yes.
So you leave that totally alone and just add that to your index when you're ready to add Firebase to it? Is that all it's for?
Yeah, I added this in my index HTML. But it's just creating a separate JavaScript file and adding it to index.html. It's nothing new or anything. I'm just creating a separate file. That's all I'm doing.
Well, because we can go and like you said, just change it.
Yeah, and just copy paste in your just copy this whole file in a new project. Just update it and forget about it. Okay.
And can I? So
yeah.
Essentially, I mean, if you're using different database APIs, you can separate them like that because it just seems smart.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna.
Yeah.
Yes, you will
and
know.
Now I understand why I'm like seeing on other websites when you see different files, like especially the column.
Yeah, and then we won't have a file with 11,000 lines. Like Blair over here works for a company who has 11,000 lines of JavaScript code in one file.
Does that actually create a variable database as a global? Because you can override it in other places.
What other places? It resides in this folder only. But yeah, you can override it.
Right. But, I mean, so if you forget that, you use it because it's so insignificant.
Right.
You only use it one time and then that's it.
Yeah, you can potentially override it. But the knowledge that we have right now, this is the best approach we can do. Yes, there are a few things, and we will learn that in due time. What's the proper way to expose a variable from your file. structure is good, our thinking is good, but the way we are doing it is kind of crude, right? Actually, the thing is, we have the knowledge that we have. This is the best we can come up with. Then we create a variable and expose it outside, right? Once we get into Node.js, you will see there are better ways to fix this issue, right? But the structure and the thinking is still correct. All right, I want to keep it separate from my code, and I want this variable to be accessible outside this file. All right, with our knowledge, this is the best we can do right now. Okay, all right. So now we will come back to our friend jQuery, and we're going to write our jQuery method for the click button. Okay. So I'm going to use the dot on, complete this, and then I'm going to put my ID, and I call it click button. Okay, and this is the click method, and I'm going to call my function an anonymous function. Okay. All right. So, and what do I want to do? I want to create a counter. Let's create a counter. Var click counter is equal to 0 when my website starts, and I want this to be incremented. So click counter plus plus. Okay, simple. Now I want this counter to be saved to my database. That's where it comes in. Okay, so we created a variable called database. Oops. So you will say database, okay, and then dot ref, and then dot set. We'll look at what this means. Okay, these are all Firebase methods, ref and set. Reference just means in your database, what are you trying to reference? Let's go back to our database. Okay, right now we'll start with empty. We won't keep anything in ref right now, and we'll come back and see what it means. Right now, just understand what it means is all the data that is going to be inserted is going to be inserted at the root. Like this is your root. It's going to be inserted below this, right? Ref allows you to make more segregation, and we'll look at what ref means. The other one important is set. Set is the one that is going to push your data from your JavaScript into that database. Okay, and set expects an object. Okay, so you can pass everything as an object. What does this tell you? What is Firebase expecting? What kind of
JSON.
JSON? Exactly. Excellent. Impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
So JSON. So Firebase is a JSON-based database. It is expecting it will store all your things in JSON format. Okay. So simple objects. I'm going to call it click count, and then I'm going to store my click counter variable, whatever that value is. Okay, and that's it. That is going to go ahead and update your counter over here. So let's see if this is working. Let's go back here. This. Okay, I'm going to open the console just to make sure there are no errors coming back from Firebase that I can check. And I'm going to keep this side by side so you guys can see how this is updated. Alright, if the setup is correct, everything is good, there are no permission issues, this should update my... Oops. Boom, you see? 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, it's so instantaneous that it seems like it's using local storage. But what is happening is from your website, it's going through the network. Right? But this is the good part of Firebase. It is real-time update. That they proud themselves calling it as real-time. This is how fast this is. It's instantaneous. Yes. Well, okay. No, we'll come back to it. Okay. All right, first, you see how fast this is? So that's what Firebase is all about. All right, let me go back and recap this. So ref means if you leave this empty, it is going to add your whatever the JSON you're adding to the root. This is called the root. This is the starting point. This is where it's going to keep adding your stuff. Okay? That's what ref means. We'll come back to ref, but understand that whatever when you add is going to keep adding on the root. That's what ref
like
means.
referring to that.
Right. It is referring to that path.
Yeah.
We'll see what it is. Set is the one that we need to consider. Set is actually inserting a row, inserting the data in your database. That's what set means. And set expects a JSON or an object which kind of translates into JSON when you're trying to insert it. Yes.
Is set both an add and an update depending on what's needed?
Good question. It's not. It's just an update right now. And you can see why. Because as soon as I click, it's not creating any extra record. It's just updating the same one.
But the first time there was no record to update.
Yeah. If it doesn't exist, it will create it. After that, it will keep updating it. Good question. All right. We'll see some methods later on how to add. Right now, as Matt is suggesting, if it makes sense, it's updating the same one, but it's okay. That's what set does. Don't worry about adding or anything. That's all we are going to concentrate today. All right? Okay? All right, questions? Wow, everybody good?
Well, no. Okay, so
Yeah, hold on. Yes.
Can you go back to the HTML for the setup? I was trying to make sure that my
We'll come back to the coding part. That's what I was saying. When I come to coding, just look at the screen and understand. Make notes, handwritten, and we'll come back to our exercise and we'll see. Yes. Hold on.
no, well, just again, referencing that the click count, that you can name it whatever.
No, referencing is something else. It is saying, where do I need to place this JSON?
Well, yeah, but because you're saying like reference, then you give it a name and the object.
Where am I giving the name? That's
Right
in
there.
the set. It's not in the ref. Ref is done. Ref stops when I've seen this kind of helps if I, exactly, that's what ref means. This kind of helps. I don't know if this is, I didn't code it this way, but I like this. So database variable, it is calling a method called ref, right? And then it is calling the method set. It is separate. Ref is something different. Set is the one that is updating the data. Okay? Ref with an empty argument is saying add everything to my root, which is the root, add everything to this thing.
Okay.
And this thing is created by Firebase automatically. We don't have to worry about this thing. Okay? Now there are options where we want to segregate our data. That's where we'll say, hey, don't add it to this. I'm going to create a new node, add it to that. That's where ref comes in. I will see ref in a bit. Yes. Yes. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Yes.
So is it only going to reference a click counter? Is that the only thing that it does, or is it mean that?
Okay. We'll come back to ref.
more stuff in there.
Yeah, we'll come back to ref.
I make sure now if you
Right.
add different.
What I want to consider right now is the set method. That's more important. We'll come back to ref in a minute. The set method is the one that is setting this thing. Everybody understand that part? Did you get that part? The set part.
I mean, I was trying to figure out if the name that the click counter name that's on the database thing. Is
Yeah.
that like something that they made up?
No, we created it. See, click count, right? We create. I can do click count 2, click count 3, counter. It doesn't matter. Whatever I am doing this over here, that's the one that is coming over there.
But I'm talking about on the Firebase side of it.
This thing on the top,
Yeah.
this is coming from your project name. I create a project. Remember, when you create a project, we call it click counter on the top. It's picking that name from there. Okay. Oh, that's what you were asking. Yes. You got it?
Yep.
That was a question?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
Where's the name coming from?
okay. Is that stuff after click counter just something it added to make it unique?
Where?
Yeah, because it looks like everybody.
This
has
thing?
different-
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of identifying itself.
Mine is 5 something.
Yeah. Everybody will have a different one. Okay. So since everybody is asking too much about ref, let me just show you what ref is.
No, then how would I?
All right. So How do I do it? Okay, let me create a counter which goes down instead. Decrement counter, and I'll start with this with 100. And when somebody clicks, it's going to go down. Okay. And this time, let me go back and remove this so that I can start with a empty node. Okay. So I'm going to set this, and then I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to say, call it decrement count, and I'm going to set this to decrement counter. Okay, same thing, same data going back. Okay, do I need the button? No, I can use the same one. Okay, now this is where what do I have to do?
Wait, I was just curious. You're using the same button, so it's also
Yeah.
adding.
Yeah. Yeah, but two different records. Yeah, totally two different records. All right. The button says click me. It doesn't say increment or decrement, so I can totally use that. So I started pretty well. Okay. Now in this, what you can do is you can now I don't want these records to be coming at the same location. I want them to be segregated out. And what we call is collections, in different collections. They are synonymous to tables in MySQL. Okay, if you don't know what that means, it's okay. But people who understand, who have used MySQL, in this format, we call them collections. So I'm going to create a collection saying slash click counter increment. You can call it anything you want. You just need the slash. Okay, and this one I'm going to call slash decrement counter. Oh no, click counter decrement. I'm going to follow the same naming standard. Okay, now let's see what happens when this is my empty database. It is null right now. Ooh, you see what happened? Now I have two collections. This is what ref is doing. It will segregate these out, what we call collections. Now let's plus it. You will see two different counts. That is what ref is. So it is creating a path to get to your value.
See, that makes sense now. Because when it was, undeclared, just go.
Patience, young Padawan. That's what happened. Yes.
Zero equals two tables
Two tables.
with one database.row.
No, it only takes one. I haven't tried it, but when I look at the code, it is just referring to the path. So if you mention more than one, it will get confused. It will say, well, this path doesn't exist. So it might
So
be
you
something.
just have to repeat.
Repeat, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I understand. Yes.
So does this hold it, for example, if you were to close the website down and reopen it?
It will hold it. Yeah, this is permanent. Good question. This will hold these values forever. It's going to be here. Now, when you close your website, right, you have to make sure when your website comes back up, you have to go back and read this value. Your website won't hold that value because you see there's no local storage, nothing, everything, your website kind of ends and dies away. But this data will be there. Our responsibility is when our website comes back up, we have to go and read that data back. And we'll see that next before anybody asks me that question.
Okay.
We're going to see that.
When you deleted your last example before, did it give you a confirmation to delete? Or was
No.
it simply a one-click
Delete. One click delete. One click delete. One click delete.
Sounds scary.
Alright? That's why we have authentication and everything set up. They kind of give you the responsibility that you know what you're doing.
Wow.
Yes.
So if you don't separate it, it would do the decrement count and the click count just
Yeah.
without
Just without it.
but this makes it look nicer.
Yeah, well, not even nicer. What it means is when we are doing our web app, you don't want everything in one collection. You want to separate them out. And there are use cases. Once you get used to it, you will understand, oh, I don't want my student record data separate, and then I want my, well, for example, I want my student information, their biodata, their profile in a separate collection, and then I want their grades to be in a separate collection. I don't want everything to be jumbled together. So you will create separate collections. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Are these collections like tables, or are they more
Yes.
like-
Yes, that's why I was saying in MySQL you would call them tables, but in this format we call them collections. Yes. Hold on, Dante had a question. The code? Yes.
Would you be able to, the way I'm going to say it is like basically creating a folder or directory, right?
Yeah.
Would you make subdirectories?
Yeah, I don't see why. You can keep adding your path. Let's try it out and see. That's a good question. I haven't again tried it. So you're saying create one called /count, like this, right?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and delete this. Let's delete this. And there it is. Oops. So it's a path. It can keep going just like a path.
How do you add that? Go back to
Just add it in your path /
So the slash is making
yeah, it's just like a
bunch of
path.
stuff if you want.
Yeah, if you want it. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's look at the read one. You guys are okay. So now I have this. I'm going to remove this. I don't like this. So. Sorry. My OCD won't allow me to keep going forward. Okay. All right. So this is setting part now, right? Now we have to understand how to read this also. Let's read this in the same one. Let's do one thing. So I'm going to let's add a text so that we can see what the value is coming by. So I'm going to add one increment counter value. Okay. And create a span. Give it an ID. Increment counter value. Okay, let's copy this. BEC counter value, and this should give me this. Okay, so this is the text that is going to show up on my screen. Then I'm going to go back here and then retrieve the data. Okay, so we start with the same database. Oops. Dot ref. We'll put this in the new line so that you can see. Dot on. Okay, what if you didn't understand even Firebase, what does dot on do in our jQuery? Quick, right? It's an event. It kind of captures it. On something, do this. That's what on means. And exactly what this means over here. What it is saying is on every time this value changes, let me know. Okay? Anytime this gets updated, the on event is going to get fired. Okay? So, and how does this work? We saw click in the jQuery. This is called, the event over here is called value. Instead of click, you are saying value. So what it means is every time the value changes, alert me. Okay? So let's start with a simpler one. I'm going to move this so that both of these come on the same path. Okay, so I'm saying every time this value changes, and the second argument is going to be a callback function. Okay, every time this changes, call this function. Now this we saw response in our API call, same thing, same concept over here. It will give the data in this variable. Okay, same as our API calls, no change over here. Now in some of the examples you will see when you're talking to Firebase, they call it snapshot. Again, you can call it anything you want, but they call it snapshot because they're saying that when this event fires, they're sending you a snapshot of the database that is currently right now in place. That's why they call it snapshot. Again, you can call it response, whatever makes sense, but in the examples you will see them snapshot, and I want to tell you the reason they call it snapshot. Because at this instant they're saying this is the snapshot of my database and this is what happened. All right, because it's real time, it can change very fast. But at this point, they're saying, oh, this was the snapshot that I've captured. Yes.
Why does it have dotted lines under storage?
Yeah, because I'm not using it. So they will go away. I'm not using this variable right now.
Oh.
I have some extension installed that kind of tells me, give me some warnings if I'm not using it. So that's what it is. Okay. Now let's see what snapshot contains. Console log snapshot. And this is what snapshot has. Okay, it returns you some different kind of stuff, but what we are interested in is the value. So it has a function called val. Okay, let's see what val has. That's what we will be using, and you guys will be. This is what val has. Let's do this. I don't know why this is getting confused, so I'm going to. Is it? Yeah. Let me start with a simpler, and then you will see multiple ones. Okay. So it will return you a JSON with whatever thing that you set up. Okay, that's what this comes back with. And since we have this JSON, we can use it. How do you access the click count? Let's say create a var response is equal to snapshot dot val. This is going to be my JSON object, right? It's console log response. Okay. Now since this is an JSON object and it has the click, how do I access the value? Dot click count, right? Response, oops, just like the parsing that we have seen. It's called click count. That's what it is called. Var, well, I can just use this in our jQuery. And it's $, hash quick, what was I calling this? Increment value. Okay. Just set. Oh, thank you. Dot text, and then I'm going to set this thing. I need the semicolon. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Keeps updating it. What was that? Right, because it is giving you, that's what I was saying. It will give you the snapshot, the whole, it's I'm overriding, I haven't like refreshed it. Yeah. So it's parsing and then putting, that's what. Let's do it. Oops. Let's look at our database. Make sure, yeah. So I'm updating. So what's happening right now? I save that value and then read it back. But you see, it's still so instantaneous that I can read that value back almost like it's like local storage or it's on my computer. Okay, that's the power of Firebase. Yes.
So that value parameter in the on function means
Yes.
a change to anything in the database.
Right.
Kind of things you're looking
Right.
at.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see what happens if I, instead of doing this, I can add multiple. It's a JSON, right? I can add multiple values here. I can totally do this also in the same one. So what happens now? It is going to create two within the same collection, and this is the root collection. You see, it's creating two now. All right. So let's complete this function. This is called DEC, and this is called this thing.
Did you set it to start at 100 for the document?
Yes. Yeah, I set it on the top.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So this example provides you not only you can read, but you can also save multiple. It's an JSON, right? It's an object. You can have multiple values over here. Within that collection is going to keep saving them. Yes.
Would we be able to do a dot set again if you wanted to do with the same database? You wanted to set the increment to file path and increment to a different file
Yeah,
path?
you can keep reusing this anything. Yeah.
So, like, so you have .ref .set already set to that database, right?
Yes.
Would you be able to do another .ref .set?
Yeah. Totally over here. That's what I would do.
No, not creating a new database, but it's straight on to add or giving to. Does that make sense?
So I'm not creating any new database over here. It's the same variable that I initialized in my Firebase API.
Right.
So there's no new database created. Okay.
But, no, you're not creating a new database. I mean, not typing out a new database line code, right?
Okay.
So you already have reference set.
Yes.
Then you do another reference set within the same object there. Yeah.
Over here.
Yep.
So do database dot set something.
No. Another .ref .set. So if you wanted to set the file path for each one of those.
Like this dot ref.
Yeah.
Dot set.
Not within set, obviously.
Okay. Oh, after.
Yeah.
Like chain it like this.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Yeah. I don't see why it wouldn't work. Let's try it out.
Set a file path for click count and then a frequent count.
So click
Let me see.
click count, and then save it again.
And then the ref for like click count and then frequent count.
Like this, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not putting decrement count, but it will work if this works over here. The reason is because I put click count. I don't want to put that. But it will work the same way. This is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
When you're creating.
So in the sense that because you created two separate ones, maybe it was just for the purpose of showing this, but
You see? It's not chaining them, so it kind of stops at
okay.
Okay. All right. So again, please forget whatever that question was. No. And the reason I'm not saying anything to him. That was a really good question, and I was curious to try. I shouldn't have tried it because this is kind of confusing everybody else. But that was a really good question. That's not what I meant. Okay. First, I want you guys to get familiar and kind of expert in this before we do something. But that was a good question, and I did it because I was curious too. I was like, oh, let me try that. That'd be so cool. But again, it doesn't. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's why I wanted to try. But okay, all right. Any other questions on this? What we have covered? All right. Wow, we have beat this horse like 1 hour. Everybody good? All right. Now you guys are going to do exercise. What is it? Everybody good? All right. So what did we cover? We can save our value. We can have more than one properties. Okay. So we covered that part also, and then we can. This is how we read it back from our database also. Okay, we saw the ref part also. You can create separate collections if you want. I would say start with the root one to get familiar with this part first. And then when you're comfortable, then look at the ref part. I would keep it empty for now. Okay? All right, so you guys created your database. Go ahead and try this exercise on your own. Create a counter, increment it, save it to your database. And that's what the next exercise is, I think. Is that right, Max? Let's see. I am looking at. Look at the countdown. Let's see. Let's see. All right. No, send them the click button complete. Okay. Look at the click button complete for like 5 or 10 minutes. It already has all the code in it. You just need to make sure you run it. Replace it with your database. All right. It already has the database string. Please don't use that one. Create the one that you created. Use that one. So let's see. And then we are going to jump into the next exercise. So this is the one that we did. I think this one only says that look at the comments and make sure you understand and make sure you run this exercise. Yep. So look at the unsolved one that he's sending. There shouldn't be any change. You have to update this change, the config over here, update that, and then run it to the one that you created. All right, update this config to the database that you created. Make sure this runs. You don't have to do any code change. Make sure you understand this is exactly the same thing that we have covered. Okay, and then we will do the next exercise that you will have to code this out. Yes. Okay. Now this exercise has something extra. Please take a look at it and try to understand what that is. I have we covered this one, but we didn't cover this one. Take a look at this one and understand and let me know what this is doing. Otherwise, everything else is the same. This part. Okay. Again, update this code with your configurations on the top. Okay, make sure it runs. This code should be running. You should be able to click update and your database should be updating over here. Okay, you can play around with the refs and everything for the next 5-10 minutes and then we'll start the next exercise. What part? Data. What data part?
Yeah.
You're in, like, I'm trying to figure it out. Man.
I mean, I
Because it
think
works, like I see it.
Database?
Keep clicking my database.
Oh, okay.
when I meant to open it, 7
Right.
Oh, no, this exercise, this already has the code solved. I just want you to look through it and understand. And the last part is an error option. Make sure you understand what that is. We haven't covered that. Everything else is covered. And update it with your config, your database, and make sure it works. That's all. There's no code change. We'll do the next exercise where you have to code this one out. Everyone knows where to find their config. The code is in project settings. This will give you your code. What is it? Right. So in the code that you are looking at, yeah, you have to replace. So this code is already there. You just need to replace this config with your config. That's all we have to do. Go back. Yeah, again, don't copy. Look at the code that comes up, just the config. Right? You're not copying everything. You just need the config part. Yes, John.
The URL. Go back
Yeah, you don't know what things are there. From the object they give you, you have to copy the business.
This is what's in here.
Because you do the part where you
Yes. And it's not showing up.
oh.
Yeah. It's like that you look at it.
I have an error.
Yeah, even saw the screen before. Then when I left out, I couldn't get back.
Now I know how to work.
All right.
Well, I was thinking of one that it couldn't be.
All right, how many people got it working? One. Not over here? No? Okay. Okay.
I tried to add like the decrease like you did.
Okay.
And I thought it would be simple because it's the same because it's add variable.
Yeah.
Adding one selections, but it would put it on there, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't stop. Like it wouldn't decrease anything. So that's something I did. I got to figure out.
Are you using the minus counter? We'll do the next exercise that has it. Okay. Next you can stack out the pages.
I had to dismiss that like on until I started working. Yeah, this was work. But like that.
Number 11? Number 11.
Number 11. Okay.
All right, for those of you who are, yes, go ahead.
We ran into this where when we first opened it, it was working in the database, but the HTML was giving us all sorts of errors. But then when we, I wonder if we'll
No. Oh, you just missed the thing that said it was public.
Yeah.
The environment, so
Yeah.
it was giving me an error on the
What was it? Yes. Remember I said in the beginning of the class?
permissions were set. It was just that not those that said on the database is public or whatever. Once we just dismissed it,
So,
The database worked from the beginning, but the HTML wasn't updating.
okay. So the database will work. When it won't work is when you're trying to connect it from external source. So HTML is external, right? It will work on yours when you try to modify database because you are there. So when it won't work is when you're trying to connect to an external source. It doesn't know whatever that external source is. For now, it's our HTML. If something else is trying to connect to you, so you need proper authentication to connect. So that's why I said use the test mode. So you wipe out the permission. You say, oh no, it's public. Anybody can access my database.
But we were updating, it was just that little first warning that you
Okay.
had.
From the HTML, then it
Yeah.
starts.
But it was with the HTML was not updating, and it kept saying
But the database was already being updated. Right.
okay, well,
I mean,
Is it working now?
yeah, once
Well, if it comes up,
There's just
don't
a
dismiss
little-
it and show me that.
there's just a little pop-up under that says like, oh, just by the way, you know, that
On the
Like,
Firebase?
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's kind of warning you that
Yeah,
it is all
yeah.
public.
There's just a warning, but that warning stopped after, like, in the HTML page. The error stopped after we just said, okay, bye.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I still have that warning. I don't think I have dismissed it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
yeah, I still have that warning. I didn't dismiss it.
Oh, that is so weird. Okay.
All right, so Max has flagged out the next activity, and this is the one you will have to code it out, everything. All right, so you can refer to the one that we just did. The only thing I want to point out in this one is, do you guys understand the second callback? Okay, so the .on function has basically the first argument is the value, right? We are checking that if the value changes, then fire this. The second argument is a callback function. This is called the success callback function. All right, in technical terms. So if my call is successful, call this function. The second one is usually optional, but you will see this, we will be starting using this. This is called the error callback. So if there is any error making this call, it's going to put this, whatever that error occurred in this variable over here. Yes? Right. Oh, okay. So if you want to clear out the database, that's different. You have to, there's a remove command. You will have to remove it. But again, why is it not clearing out? Because I said it's more permanent, right? So it will never clear out unless you specifically say, when I close my browser, delete everything. So there's a remove command and remove function. You can look at the documentation. But yeah, it will never remove from here unless you do it explicitly. Yes?
So what causes that? Is the value fired on refresh?
It's not, it's being fired. Oh, or for this one, let's see.
If you refresh the page,
Yeah.
why does nobody pull through data?
Why is it getting interest? So let's look at the code. You see the code is actually on the, it's actually on the JavaScript. Whenever it's not based on this thing, whenever your page refreshes, this code fires this is dependent on the click event, so it stops over here. But this is on your main JavaScript, so that's why this code gets called every time.
That's considered an update.
Yeah, that's considered. Well, this is not an update. This is getting the value. So it's this code gets the whatever the last value is in your database. Yeah, and this is getting fired because I have this on my main. It's not dependent on this click. That's why. When I was showing the example, I put it in my click. So if you move this method inside your click, then it won't show up ever unless you click something. This is outside, so that's why it keeps getting called every time you refresh the page. Okay? Alright, so let's do the next exercise. This you will have to code it out, so maybe this will kind of help you see. You can move around the code and see what happens. Max has flagged out that activity. You have to use, you can use the current database that you guys have set up. And then, this one. So again, you will see two JavaScript files over there. All right. The second one doesn't have any code in it. So if you are feeling challenged, right, use this one. But if you are still kind of not sure, then the logic one, this one has lot more comments. It already has kind of code built in what you have to do. So you can start with this. Okay? Again, if you're doing this one, if you are starting from the beginning, try the practice that I use, Firebase API. Again, it's not necessary. You can put all the code on the top and it will still work. But if you guys want to kind of segregate your code, you can look at the strategy that I did. Create a new Firebase API and put the initialization over there, and then remember to put the database is equal to that command over there, firebase dot initialize. Yes. Yeah, that's not clear. Yeah, you can read it. Yeah, you can take it if you want to read it. Okay, so go back to Firebase. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, go back to I haven't tried it. Well, this yeah, sure. Let's on this and see what it is. Okay. It doesn't do anything. Okay, I'm going to do the difficult one with this. Name this to logic. Okay, I don't have to change anything. I'm going to use my old database, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's see. I have the Firebase reference. I'm going to move this on the top and use the document.ready. Okay. So my Firebase is there, jQuery is there, my script file is there. I want to add my Firebase API. So I'm using my database, so I don't even have to change anything. I just copy this API that I built initially so that I don't have to do anything. Okay, let's go back here. Okay, so I don't have to worry about initializing since I did over in my API call. Initial load. Let's see, I have this function and this function over here. Let's go ahead and add a dollar document dot ready function. Don't need this, and then I'm going to move this at the bottom so that everything is inside this. Okay. All right. Let's see. Get the snapshot of the current data. Oops, where's my Firebase? Let's remove this. Let's remove this. So what is it doing when I click? Only 100 clicks to go. So something should show up here. And then I need to restart button. Okay, let's see. Click on at the initial load, get a snapshot of the current data. So I get the snapshot using the on function. So database dot ref dot on. And this is in my, should be accessible here, right? Firebase API, then logic. Okay, should be working. All right, so I'm going to keep this empty from my root folder, and then on I'm going to get the value back. Okay, and then I'm going to have my function. What is it?
Doesn't that tell you to find out what changes when you type that?
Yes, if the value is changed. Let's find out. Yeah. If nothing changes, then yeah, it will be empty basically. Yeah.
But if it already had something,
then it would. Yeah, for the next. Interesting. Let's see if that comes back as something. I see what you're saying. Let's find out. So I have this, and then I'm going to use the error one also. Function. If there's any error, I want it to, yes.
You said responsive before the snapshot, right?
Yes. What was that again?
Snapshot, we were talking about snapshot and response, the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's whatever you want over here. It's just a variable name. You can put a response, you can put it ABC, you can put anything.
Okay.
Remember all the callback functions? You can put anything over it, it doesn't matter. But you have to be consistent then.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So let's log our snapshot to see what's coming back. Snapshot.well. Okay, let's try this. So when I refresh my page, yeah, it doesn't get fired. You see, there's nothing coming back. Yeah, because I changed it. Yeah.
Or would it still not answer?
Yeah. Let's see. So using the ref. We're using on. Let's see what it has. Okay, so event type value. We can use the value one. Child added, child changed, child moved. So these are the only ones that are available.
We don't want on.
Let's see what else. Oh, there's an update one. I wonder if that's. Let's see. Initial poll. Yeah, once function. That's what I was saying. Let's replace it with once and see what happens. Object returning no.
I'm getting no for the response.
Okay. Is there any error on your console?
So this it gave me a line. It's the response.val.
Response dot.
Or snapshot.
And it's a function, right? Okay. And do you have data in your database right now? Or is it empty? Right. So that's valid then. You'll get a null, right? Yeah. So you'll say, well, if nothing, yeah. You show nothing. Yep. That's valid. You can have nulls in your database. What is it? What was it?
The value.
I suppose it would. Yeah.
Yes.
So there's nothing because nothing is changing. That's why.
Right. Well, that's why I was thinking maybe once instead of on.
Yeah, I tried once. It's not
When you
working.
did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll look at the break and see if there's anything else. But looks like it's whenever, huh?
We're just moving on for now.
Yeah, we'll complete this one and then see if there's anything that we have. That's interesting though. Okay, so when the click button happens,
Yeah, when you first load it, it's not. It starts working when you start changing it. But first load it. And it doesn't matter if it's on that.
click counter.
Maybe it can, what would be put? Well, it's got to run on somewhere. Like I had it before with the on with no laptop, but we were trying to get it to work. It's not that. Right, but the instructions say that's what I'm trying to do.
And then you want to do minus.
And that's what that does. Oh, that's so it. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't. I know that word. So I just. I'll worry about it. I know this word. Thanks. I was trying to fix it. Yeah. Maybe values are on. Oh, the quick look.
So you did it right.
Oh, my click counter is empty. Hmm.
Although we're, let's say,
For me, it's not even saving to my database for some reason.
oh, yeah.
Oh, that's why. It's working on the page load. It didn't work for you, Matt?
It's not working for me. It's not going to my database.
On the page load?
On the page load.
Oh, okay, I see. So that's why it's good. Okay. Yeah, it returns a null that it doesn't exist.
So I figured out why.
Yeah. So it is Matt.
Once I started
Right.
saving stuff and then I uploaded
Yeah.
it automatically.
Right. So it is working on the initial load. It just doesn't exist.
Right. Okay.
So it is working. The value thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So you
there's
see.
nothing there.
Yeah, that's why it's not working. So if I refresh it, it does work.
It automatically.
All right.
Oh, we do show.
Yeah, it does show. It just we don't have a value.
It was null, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
log it, basically.
All right. Questions? So what I did was I just for your initial load the value is going to work. You might get a null because it's initial load. There's nothing. So you might want to check the value for null. If it is null, this means your database doesn't. It exists, but there's literally nothing in it. So make a check, right? Check for that null. Otherwise, when you click, it should go ahead and update it, and then your database should be showing something. Okay. So the next time when I do an initial load, when I refresh my page, it comes back with the right count. Okay. So make sure you put that check for the null. All right. Any other questions before I move on to the next one? All right. Max will select out the more properties. Now again, these all are following the same pattern. If you didn't get this one, okay, there's a second try. The only thing is, it's a little bit different as in it's just a different use case. But if you see it, it's still using the same logic. So for this one, I would recommend create a new database. This will give you more practice. The only difference is it is using multiple properties, right? We saw in the previous one, I had like increment and decrement. Right, this time they have multiple properties. That's all this code is doing. That's the only difference. Now, the logic is different as in this time we have name, age, and phone number. But again, if you look at the code, It's still the same logic. You're initializing your Firebase, you're initializing your database, but this time your UI has 3 fields. So how do you update more than one? Same thing. In your set method, you are passing more than once. Okay? Other than that, there is absolutely no change in the logic. Same logic that we did in the click count. Okay? So take 5 minutes. Again, there's no code that you have to do. What I would recommend is create a new database. This will give you practice how to create a new one. Update this config with the new database and then run this code and you will see inputs and all that stuff. So if I run this, so I'm going to get this thing and then whatever the data is pulling back. So right now it doesn't look like there's anything in the database which just pulls the name, but when you create yours, it's going to input your name, age, and phone number. When you submit it, it should go to your new database and save everything over there and then retrieve it back. Yeah, select this one, please. Okay, so this one, again, take a look at the code, make sure you understand it. If you want to make it run, update your config, create a new database. This will give you practice how to create a new one. And then update your config. And then run this code. All right, make sure it is running. And then we will go on to the one, the next exercise kind of similar to this one. This time you'll have to code this one out. So it should come back with something. Again, the only change I would recommend is create a new database and update this config. This one is kind of like a general one that everybody uses it. So you won't be able to see any change in it. You don't have access to it from the UI. Okay? But since this is public, anybody can access it through the code. That's why you don't see an error. Yes. What is it? Yeah. What are you talking about?
Like it should say you're progressing, and you put that on down.
Depending where you are. So we are the only thing is okay. You see what I mean? You just need this. Okay. So you selected
I had a syntax error. Frustrating. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's what he can do.
Well, that's what they find out.
Actually, if you want a separate file just for connecting to the database, nothing else.
Right.
But he can set a salary file, and then he can link to it in the header.
Well, that's what I was asking, you know, like,
Right. No, I get that. But it's still just what it's body.
Right. So that's why like for this part, it would still technically review our database file in here, but then this part of your variables, then at that point.
But can you put that in the header? Like, why does this exist in the file?
Because this is in JavaScript, we put that in the header. You're already writing.
Right, but you put script tag in the header.
But you still have to, that's the thing with writing it, you're not actually writing the script. You have to then put it in between script.
Right. But you can't you just grab all this and mark your header?
You gotta do that separate.
Well, putting it in the same way you should always ask.
Well, yeah, in general, you shouldn't really do that, but.
I guess in this case there is no issue. Oh yeah. There's oh yeah, they even reference jQuery. That's really good.
Yeah, the thing is we're not using it all in one document.
But they give themselves documents and everything to 4 pages to save, and they still have
Oh, you know why? Because I know because we wanted it
because they're not real basic. And actually, it's on the initial example game, precisely this. He did the JavaScript, jQuery, and then he already added his own JavaScript file, and he said, "Please, this is Apple." He just said, "Make sure it's before yours."
All right. So we'll start the next one. Everybody good with this one? Any questions on this one? Again, there was no code change other than the config. Yes, Ali. Line number what? This one? Line number 52. These things?
Yeah. This is just referring, but you understand we're creating local variables and we're going to assign this over. That's what it is. So these, no, nothing changed. Yeah, it should automatically. So what's happening? Simple jQuery, right? We have our variables, we are reading from jQuery and putting into this, and then we are saving these variables to our database. Okay? Yep. So I know what it says, but basically if you look at the code, we are saving these values our database as variables.
Okay. All right. Any questions on this? Yes. What was it? Huh? What was the what? You were going through the code. You didn't go through the code? Okay. So did you understand what it is doing? That was it? Yeah. That was it. Yeah. Did you update the config, create a new database? What's the error? What's the error? Right. So again, all right, guys, here, let's back up. What did I say initially?
Test mode.
Test mode. We have to create a real-time database and we have to select test mode. All right. I walked you guys through the first one. Remember? What did I say?
Test mode.
Test mode.
No permissions to
There should be no permission denied. So what I'm seeing is, first of all, some people have this selected on. I said it has to be real-time database. Okay? If you have real-time database selected, you still are getting permission denied, then you have to manually go into rules and then set this to true and true. And this is going to happen if you didn't select the test mode. All right? First error. Real-time database, not Cloud Firestore. We selected real-time database. And if you still miss the test mode, then you have to go into your rules tab and then make this from false to true. Okay? And then you won't get the permission denied. Randy, did you get that working?
Yeah.
Okay.
So once you change it to true, a button pops up, you have to publish it.
Yeah.
A real-time update completely published.
Right. You have to publish the changes because you're modifying your database. Okay? Yes.
How did you get to the screen that you're on right now, where it says database and then real-time database?
You click this database and then it will show you which one you have selected. If you have Cloud Firestore, it's not going to work. Working?
I'm not seeing that, like, you know, when I click on database on the left, that screen is not showing that
I had that happen earlier, but I hadn't actually graded.
All right. Working now? All right. Let's do the next one, the most basic user. All right. Again, that's why I was saying that, take notes and then go back and look at the notes and do it. When people are looking and trying to follow along, I've seen this happens a lot. Okay. It's common, but okay. All right. So let's do the next one, and this will give you practice. I'm saying create a database from scratch. This will give you those pitfalls, and you will understand what to do. Okay. The code is already there for the next one too, but I would highly recommend going back and creating your own database and then updating the config. Let's look at this one. Again, there's a lot of white noise in the code. Okay, what I mean is you have your HTML there, you have your bootstrap, but don't get bogged down on it, right? The main thing is still Firebase, so we have to make this working. People get confused, oh, what is this? What is going on? Again, we should be able to quickly skim by now. And I look at this, I'm like, okay, this is all bootstrap. Okay, I'll come back to this if I want any of these IDs, but for now I can skip down, keep going down. Okay, and this is what happens. I have my Firebase added. Okay, I have to initialize my Firebase. Again, copy that config file and initialize your database over here. Okay, and then you start working on it. Okay, so this exercise is kind of difficult. Now it doesn't even have any code over here, but we know where to get that code, right? We go into our project settings. Okay, and then we copy that config. And now we are smart enough to know what we need to copy. Do I need to copy this whole thing? No, looking at our code, I just need, the script is already there. I just need this part now, right? I don't need to copy the whole. So I copy this, and then from your previous ones, we saw database.initialize. What was that function? Remember that function and bring that function over. And you can look at the previous exercise also. Firebase Firebase.database. Okay, this is the extra line that you will have to add. And this is already there in the previous one that you guys were looking at the code. Okay, now you are writing that code. Let's see how this one looks like. Okay, it's similar to what we did in the last class, but we use local storage. This time we are using our database. Same concept, same thing. You submit and it will go and save and it will retrieve that data back. Okay, saving set retrieving dot on value. All right, so we'll continue this in 7 minutes. We'll break for lunch. We'll come back at 12:45, and then we'll spend maybe like 10 minutes more on this one, and then we'll do some little bit challenging exercise after that. Okay, so I told you I'm going to push you, and you will realize when you're sitting in that interview that this was helpful. Okay. What was that?
It's like I'm not feeling that way right now.
Yeah. What is it?
I had them right here, but when I went to create the new database, it didn't give me that part.
It did?
Instead of going the long route to the database, I would go outside and add project. When you just click add project,
From the drop down. Which is the drop down? I'm kind of curious now. This?
yeah,
This?
like your click there, when you hit add project,
Oh.
it gives you like private or just gives you that. So like take
Yeah.
one, so then I wasn't working because I didn't know that you were supposed to add projects. Because it doesn't let you do the test mode there.
It doesn't?
No,
It's the same
it creates, yeah, it creates.
Oh, it creates it?
For you. And it doesn't do it because it doesn't get any errors. And I'm like,
So I create this one and just creates it?
and then I gotta go back and I gotta go back and then go through the process.
So the test code comes when you go into your database tab. It's not going to come over here. So I'm still confused why.
Yeah, so I didn't know I had to go back to the database tab and go real time and then change it after that. I thought it was.
So that's the regular process if you even start from the beginning. So I go over here, it's the same step. And then I have to go into my database. Remember, it's the same step. And then I have to now select the real time.
It doesn't, yeah, it's still.
And then I have to do this, and then I have to do this. It's the same step if you go from the first screen.
Right, I didn't know. I got it since it was already on that one. But
Oh, no, yeah. Add project means you're completely adding in this.
and then you have to go back and do that.
And even if
And I know
you
things
start
over
with
there
nothing,
in settings can get all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just weird, just on their server. It's not really
Yeah. I mean,
well, that might.
doesn't say it's possible.
Those two are not related.
I'm not qualified to say that for a fact, but
I'm not a medical.
because I want to even
Oh, next created twice a day is normal. Why does that accept the fact you created it the first time?
What is it?
Like you go through the creation process, and then you get the code, and then it actually gets in the database. So you go through the creation process again, and now it's invisible.
Oh, yeah. So that's what they do is that if there's no data, they assume that, oh, yeah, forget about it. Yeah, it kind of reinitializes it. Yeah. That's how they have set it up there. Oh, there's no data, they kind of take that memory back, right? And then they don't allocate until you have something.
Girl, you don't get
Yeah. That's why they're fast. All right, if you are done or you want to go for lunch, it's okay, and we'll come back we'll reconvene at 12:45. I'll be here. I see a lot of people are having issues, so I'll be here during lunchtime. If you want any help, let me know. TAs are probably going to go out for lunch, but I see there are some issues, so I'll be here. Okay. So if you need any help, let me know, and I want to make sure that everybody is at least able to set up the database and make that initial call. Okay, because the next exercise is just getting more challenging. All right. We'll come back and we'll start at 12:45 sharp. Yes.